On tonight's summary of the Israel-Hamas War, day 291, new videos emerged showing a hostage during his kidnapping on October 7th. Israeli family members say they had to struggle in order to get permission to publish the footage. The IDF widened its Han Yunis operation to a full-scale brigade invasion, targeting Hamas's attempts to rebuild in the southern city. Yemeni Houthis release a video showing their new drone models, stating that they have added Israel's natural gas fields in the Mediterranean to their target banks. Palestinian factions announce a reconciliation unity government that will govern the Gaza Strip after the war. Hamas praises the move while Fatah leaders sound more skeptical. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu visiting the United States, meetings arranged with President Biden as well as with the likely candidates for both parties in the upcoming presidential elections. Hello everyone, I am Alon Burstein, visiting assistant professor in the Department of Political Science and Israel Institute fellow at the University of California, Irvine, here bringing you the latest highlights from the Israel-Hamas War. It's currently the evening of July 23rd, 2024 in the United States, the morning of July 24th, 2024 in the Middle East. Starting with the hostage situation, the family members of Matan Tzangauker, a 24-year-old Israeli held hostage in the Gaza Strip, published new video images of him from the day of his kidnapping on October 7th. In the few-second images, Matan is seen on a motorbike being held between two of his captors as he's driven through the streets of Han Yunis while the crowd around him makes a lot of noise, mostly cheering. The footage was discovered from intelligence gathering of the IDF in the Gaza Strip, alongside Matan's cell phone, which was also located in the strip. While the footage was reportedly given to Matan's family members already a week ago, Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu's appointed coordinator for the hostage situation, Gal Hirsch, did not permit the release of the footage until an all-night protest was staged by Tzangauker's mother. After that, the footage was authorized to be released. I only mention this because it lends some credence to the hypothesis I raised in yesterday's report, stating that it is possible that the military censorship in Israel is blocking a lot of Hamas's videos of the hostages. That is why they're not being shown in Israel. Again, that was a hypothesis then. Today, however, it was stated that censorship did not permit the showing of this footage until an all-night protest was staged, so it lends some credence to that hypothesis. Moving on to the Gaza Strip, with the one main report coming out from the southern parts of the Gaza Strip, the fighting that is going on in Han Yunis and in Rafah. The IDF is reportedly expanding its raid into Han Yunis, which is shaping up to be a full brigade-wide operation, which may be the largest raid the IDF is carrying out in what it has termed as the third phase of the war, i.e. the phase in which the IDF is moving to more low-intensity fighting and focused raids. This started as a focused raid, but now reportedly it is turning into a full brigade-wide invasion. IDF divisions have been seen preparing to enter the city, with some armored divisions already entering the city from different sides. The military has announced that it is focusing on Hamas's attempts to re-establish itself in the region. I remind everyone that the IDF pulled out of Han Yunis at the beginning of April. Since then, there's been no IDF activity in Han Yunis, only targeted raids and airstrikes. Hamas has reportedly been rebuilding. Now the IDF is coming in order to push Hamas back. As part of this, the IDF has also narrowed the humanitarian zone in the Al-Mawasi refugee camp. Again, all this was published yesterday. You can see yesterday's report for more details. Meanwhile, in Rafah, the bulk of the fighting is still focused in the Tel Sultan region in the western parts of the city. This has proven to be the most fortified stronghold that Hamas has had in the city and possibly in the Gaza Strip. The IDF has been trying to take over every inch of Tel Sultan already for well over a month. However, intensive fighting is still being reported there, both by the IDF and by the Al-Qassam brigades. Regarding casualties, no IDF soldier was reported killed or injured in the Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours, leaving the total number of IDF soldiers killed in the Gaza Strip since the invasion began on 326, and the number of IDF soldiers injured in the Gaza Strip since the invasion began on 2,147. The Palestinian Health Ministry in the Gaza Strip is reporting that 84 Palestinians were killed in the Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours, the vast majority of them in Han Yunis, bringing the total number of Palestinians killed in the Gaza Strip since the war began to 39,090. 90,147 Palestinians are reported injured in the Gaza Strip since the war began. I remind everyone that according to estimates, there are still between 7,000 and 10,000 Palestinians that are buried under the rubble and presumed dead. Moving on to the West Bank. After yesterday I reported that there was IDF activity that was brewing in Tulkarem, this developed into a full-scale operation in which the IDF invaded the city, reportedly in pursuit of the local leaders of both the Al-Qassam brigades, Ashraf Naafa, as well as the local leader of the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade, that is the military wing of Fatah, Muhammad Abu Abdo. Major IDF armored units, including engineering units, were seen in the city, and airstrikes were also reported. Both the local leaders of those organizations were in fact killed in the different gun battles, and one of them killed in an IDF airstrike before the operation was concluded. In addition to that, hours after the conclusion, the IDF launched another operation into Tulkarem, besieging a house. That operation is still ongoing as of my recording this, so at this point it is unclear who exactly the IDF is trying to either arrest or kill in that operation right now. Remains to be seen. More about that, obviously, in the next reports. Moving on to the northern parts of Israel and southern parts of Lebanon, there were continuous barrages of rockets and missiles fired from Lebanon targeting the northern parts of Israel, and continuous retaliations of the IDF targeting different Hezbollah targets. Barrage of over 15 rockets were fired towards the areas of Kiryat Shmona, and other rockets targeted the areas of Hardov, Margaliot, Tel Chai, Misgav Am, Kfar Vadim, Chosen, and Ras Gozan. Major fires broke out in northern parts of Israel between Kiryat Shmona and Beit Hillel, as well as near the areas of Chorafish and Yehudia Junction. Regarding IDF activity, the IDF attacked rocket launchers in the Hammam village with substantial airstrikes, as well as targeting Hezbollah structures and infrastructures and lookout posts in the areas of Itash Ab, Al-Khayam, and other regions in southern Lebanon. Al-Manar also reported attacks that occurred near the Shuva village, as well as in the areas of Marhaba, Hula, and Anakora. Some specific events from this front in the last 24 hours, the IDF reported a specific airstrike that was carried out in the Thalusa village, targeting operatives engaged in rocket fire. Al-Manar reported as well an attack that targeted a vehicle in the Shakra area, stating that 3 missiles fired at a vehicle in which 2 people were killed. This fits the profile of what is called a targeted assassination. Hezbollah later announced that one of its operatives were killed in this attack, however the IDF did not confirm that that was the target of the assassination. In addition, several suicide drones reportedly managed to penetrate Israeli airspace and detonated on Mount Meron in northern parts of Israel. Drones were also intercepted above the areas of Akko and Nahariya. Those suicide drones on Mount Meron reportedly caused the spreading of a lot of fires in the area. Some regional reports from the last 24 hours. The Houthis put out a video as well as accompanying footage stating that they are showing the newly developed Jaffa drone that the movement claims was used in the attack in Tel Aviv. The movement has claimed that this is a locally developed drone that has the capability of overcoming the air defenses both of Israel and of the United States. However, it's important to note that both Israeli and U.S. intelligence believe that the suicide drone that detonated in Tel Aviv several days ago was in fact an upgraded Simad-3 Iranian drone and not a locally made drone. However, the Houthis maintain that this was a locally made drone, codenamed Jaffa. Later in the day, Al-Ahbar published a report quoting Houthi sources as stating that in response to the IDF's retaliation in Yemen, the Houthis now plan on intensifying their attacks against Israeli targets. The sources specifically referred to the fact that oil rigs were hit in the Hudaydah port of Yemen in the IDF retaliation, saying that this has led the Houthis to decide to include Israel's natural gas fields in the Mediterranean within the bank of potential targets that the Houthis are going to attack, as well as power plants and oil tankers that are bound for Israel. Again, so the Houthis are stating that they're going to turn this into an energy war after their oil rigs were attacked in the Hudaydah port. It's going to become an energy war. That's what they're going to focus on in their later attacks in Israel. Some political news from the last 24 hours. For the past few days, there's been a summit meeting attended by members of 14 Palestinian factions that has been happening, hosted by the Chinese authorities in Beijing. While the initial reports about the summit was that it was going to include high-profile delegates, including the PLO leader and president of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, and the Hamas leader, Ismail Haniyeh, the movements were eventually represented by members of their respective political bureaus, Musa Abu Marzouk for Hamas and Mohammed El-Alul for Fatah, and it appeared that the fact that they were sending aides rather than the leaders coming was downplaying this meeting. However, while it initially seemed that the meeting was mostly for show, official Chinese state media reported today that there was a breakthrough that occurred in the meetings and an agreement on a, quote, national reconciliation government that will govern the Gaza Strip that will be made up of the different Palestinian factions after the war. Hamas put out an official message several hours later welcoming what it defined as a national unity moment. Alongside this optimism that was raised in those different reports, it's also important to note that this is far from the first time that the sides have come to what they call a unity agreement. It dates back already to 2017 when the sides have announced they're going to form unity governments, and these keep on faltering almost immediately after the announcements. Even during the war, there was a summit that occurred in Russia back in February in which the sides declared their intent to work together, but to no avail. Somewhat strengthening the more pessimistic view, Fatah leaders also were quoted throughout the day as stating that the main outcome of the meeting is public relations for China that wants to show its involvement in the Middle East, adding that, quote, the rift between Hamas and Fatah cannot be mended. And in other political news, after multiple schedule changes, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu is now due to meet both with President Biden as well as with Vice President Harris on Thursday. This comes after he addresses Congress on Wednesday, as well as with former President Trump on Friday. As a result of these scheduling changes, Prime Minister Netanyahu and his wife are going to end up spending the weekend in the United States, a fact that came under heavy criticism in Israel due to the scheduling changes and due to a lot of criticism over the fact that while the family members of the different hostages that accompanied Prime Minister Netanyahu are likely to return to Israel on commercial airlines, the Prime Minister and his wife are going to stay in the United States for the weekend during the war. Again, that more relates to internal politics, but that has been a bulk of the news coming out from Israel in the last 24 hours. If you find these reports informative, please do remember to hit that like button, subscribe, turn on notifications if you want to know when reports are going to come out. I also ask that you send them on to anyone that you think may be interested or any listeners you're a part of. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Those are my highlights from the last 24 hours. Thanks for watching.